remember seeing you there when we think we worked together some years ago. Congratulations on your service. Dr. King, following up on Senator Schott's point, 3 years ago, Senator Mikulski and Bennett and Burr and I asked a broad group of higher education people to give us specific recommendations about how we could cut through the so-called jungle of red tape that unnecessarily interferes with the wise use of the money they have. And they gave us a really good report. We, working with Senator Murray on our committee, we're trying to identify maybe 36 of those that might be a part of a reauthorization of higher education or some version of it. But the leaders of that committee, Chancellor Kerwin, Chancellor Zeppos from Maryland and Vanderbilt, met with Arne Duncan and gave him a list of 10 ideas that are, several ideas, about 10, that are among the top 10 of the 59. Now, I want to ask you about one of those, which is not something you can do, but relates to Senator Schott's question. One of the recommendations was that we allow accreditors, and this would take a change in law, to spend more time on a nonprofit, for example, on a for-profit school with problems, and less time on Harvard or UCLA in their accrediting process. In other words, risk adjustment. Doesn't that just make common sense?
Yeah. We certainly be happy to work with you on a risk management strategy for accreditors.
But they have 6,000 institutions to accredit. It doesn't make any sense to me that you'd spend the same amount of time on a well-functioning university that everybody regards and the same amount of time on an institution that's in a lot of trouble, and everybody knows that too. So you may be able to affect that. We may be able to affect that legislation. Here's another suggestion they made. This is the application form that 20 million families fill out every year for student aid. 108 questions, very intimidating, discourages a lot of students. Senator Bennett and I and Booker and Burr suggest it be 2 questions because that's the testimony we heard from almost everybody. The president has said that he likes going from here as close to here as we can. His budget for the last 2 years has said there are 30 questions that he could take off that 108. Can you tell us, not today, but will you tell us what those 30 questions are so we can at least go from 108 to 78 and then go as more rapidly toward 2 as we can?
Absolutely. And one promising step, as you know, is that we are allowing, beginning next year, folks to use the prior year tax information, which both satisfies the report and also will simplify this process.
That is part of our legislation and is part of the report, and I applaud you for doing that. Now, there are 3 provisions in that report, and I won't ask you to get into them today, but I'm going to ask you, will you commit to try to do these 3 that are in the top 10 of the report by the end of the year? One is the return of Title IV funds, an overly complex 200-paragraph regulatory text about just the question of a student returning money to the federal government when they withdraw from school. Number 2, financial responsibility standards. There's regulations written in the 1990s that are so complex that Georgetown University got a near failing grade on a recent financial test, which is absurd. And 3, on the reporting of data to the department, they say there are 11 different annual surveys. At Vanderbilt, one survey required 1,000 person hours to complete. Surely that could be simplified. Will you please work on those 3 that are in the top 10 and see if they can be accomplished by the end of the year?
Certainly committed to working with you and your staff to see what progress we can make on these.
Now, a last question, and it's more of a comment. We're looking for signals about how well you're going to follow the impulse of Congress in this new elementary and secondary education law. We had a consensus that needed to be fixed, and our consensus was while we wanted the reporting requirements, we wanted the decisions about what to do about tests back with states, classroom teachers, et cetera. That wasn't just Republicans, wasn't just governors, it was teachers, it was almost everybody, which is why we got 85 votes in the Senate for the bill. Yet, your budget recommends $5.3 billion for 6 new elementary and secondary programs that we did not authorize, and only $500 million for the $1.65 million block grant that we did authorize. a lot of senators wanted some new programs, and they didn't get them because we eliminated 49 programs. So why would you be recommending new programs that we didn't authorize just this past December and not funding properly the block grant that we did authorize?
Well, let me start with the Title IV program. So we think Title IV is very important. We think the priorities in Title IV around a well-rounded education, around arts education, school counseling, safe and supportive school climates are all very important. We've proposed the prior Title IV programs had about $278 million of funding. We've proposed taking that to $500 million, or $222 million increase for the Title IV batch of programs. But we were trying in this budget to both advance the president's priorities and stay within the caps on discretionary spending. We're certainly open to working together with you in this committee to look at how we move forward in a way that acknowledges those priorities and makes the important investments that we all believe in.
Senator